Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Welcome back. I'm Karen Cunningham, special education boss, helping families and individuals sit at the 504 IEP table, navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. We are in a series, Parents, Procedural Rights, Procedural Safeguards under the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Next, we're going to do prior written notice. Here's the great thing. So you need to know about the PWN. It is huge. It is what's going to be looked at really with fidelity by a hearing officer, if you ever get into that position, a federal appellate judge, any other judge, hearing officer, or fact finder. So the prior written notice, there are 8 components that are required to be in there. The problem that you might have as a parent with the prior written notice is, does the parent fill the prior written notice? We'll go with no. Who fills it out? The school. So a prior written notice is CFR 300-503. 502B4 is back to the IE. The prior written notice is 300-503 in federal code. And there are components that must be in there. So a school district must provide parents with a prior written notice, PWN, whenever it proposes or refuses to initiate or change the identification, evaluation, or educational placement of the child or the provision of faith. They must provide a prior written notice whenever it proposes to refuse to initiate. These are all refuses. Refuse to initiate, change the identification, evaluation, or educational placement of the child, or refusing the provision of faith. So here are the components that must sit inside of the prior written notice under 300-503B. Number 1, a description of the action proposed or refused by the district or county, depending on where you live. Number 2, an explanation of why the district or county proposes or refuses action. It's always the why. Okay. Number 3, a description of each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report the district used to base its decision. A description of each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report the district used to make its decision. A statement, this never happens, a statement that the parents have protection under Part B's procedural safeguard. You ever seen that written in the PWN? Statement that the parents have protection under Part B's procedural safeguards. Never seen that written. Next, the prior written notice is not an initial referral. If the prior written notice is not an initial referral for evaluation, the means by which a copy of the description of procedural safeguards can be obtained. Right? So if the PWN is not about an initial evaluation denial, then the school has to provide you a location of which you can get a copy of your procedural safeguards. If you're a school-based member, I would give families a copy of their procedural safeguards at the beginning of the meeting, halfway through the meeting, at the end of the meeting, and when they're leaving the meeting. Any questions? Would you like another copy? Would you like a copy? Would you like me to overnight you a copy? Because that's a violation that you'll be on the hook for. Next, it needs to list sources for parents to contact to obtain assistance in understanding the provisions of Part B. Sources for parents to contact to obtain assistance in understanding the provisions of Part B, right? And we're in that a little bit later. So IDEA is broken up into A, B, C. A, B, C. I've never seen that link in there. I don't know if you guys provide that where they can have their information explained to them. I do have links to, we live in Region 4, so a link to Region 4, the information for TEA, that sort of thing. Next, you need a description of other options considered by the IEP team and the reasons why those options were rejected. Like, working with the parent, listening to the parent, right? So what other options were considered and why did you reject them, right? So we had an evaluation from the Surgeon General. Keitha's cousin is the head of the Surgeon General. We're allergic to the Surgeon General, so we didn't use it, right? So what was the stuff and why you rejected it? So you would say, we believe that his 504 is sufficient, right? We believe that's meeting his, it's making such great progress in the 504 that tracks progress, right? So you have to say, right? So you have to acknowledge, and sometimes in a PWN, there's more conversation about your evaluation and in the meeting. Is that accurate? You're like, wow, thought we spent 2 seconds not considering it, right? So, and then a description, the last one is a description of the factors relevant to the school district's proposal or refusal. We're an IEP team, but I would recommend that you guys go back and really pull a PWN. I think it's the least looked at document. I think good job, Carmen. So when I have a client before I do my billing or whatever, I get a final document, right? So Julianne's going to wrap it up. She's going to send me a copy. Everybody copy the document in a day or two. You need to go back and look at that, especially if you're their advocate. If you disagree at the end of the meeting, we're certainly going to provide a written response back to the school when I have a chance to sit down and capture all of my disagrees as it relates to parents' 19 procedural rights. We're going to say the student was denied FAPE and the student was harmed. So sometimes those legal terms really pushes the school-based members over the edge. But certainly you want to capture that and have them attached to the deliberations. And sometimes I'm going to wait till I get their goofy PWN to respond. Because sometimes there's even more goofiness in the PWN than happened in the actual meeting. To clarify, a prior written notice is for any action, right? So it will say why this action was refused. This action wasn't refused. We collaborated with the parents and wrote new IEP goals, right? But either way, when there are changes in the IEP document or you have an IEP meeting, you have to have a prior written notice. Now, some school districts will rattle off that these signatures are the PWN. These deliberations and signatures constitute a PWN. I don't think they do. These deliberations and signatures constitute a prior written notice. They don't. You would have to have those 8 components. Those 8 components never sit in your deliberations. So I would just gently say, in your gentle way, we would respectfully disagree that these deliberations and signatures constitute a PWN. We certainly would like to have one populated and attached to the document. Okay? So when they rattle off stuff like that, just go, it's no for us. We want all of those components because you have the right to the prior written notice. And if they're just rattling off these deliberations and signatures constitute a prior written notice, then you sort of forfeited your legal rights under IDEA. Okay? So, any questions about the PWN?
Is there a time limit to provide a PWN after the meeting?
So I wouldn't imagine it's more than 5 business days. Because if I'm going to not waive my 5 business days, then I can decide in that time to consider that first meeting a disagree and come back and reconvene. I don't think I've ever waited more than 5 days for a PWN as it relates to a disagree. But certainly if, sometimes you might get, it's Friday of spring break or Thursday of spring break and Tim has 18 ARDs the next day or IEP meetings the next day and we didn't disagree. Certainly I'm not going to go, So I always say, Tim, you have till midnight. Take your time. If you've been in a meeting with me, you know that I really do say that. But they want to get those handled as well because, that will snowball. But if for some reason the next business day you're not in receipt of it, I would say I haven't yet received the PWN. And I kind of want to just speak to, especially as it relates to a PWN or an IEP document, I am vehemently against sending special ed documents with a child. So you can send it certified mail. You can send it by Instacart. We don't shove it in Billy's, right? That's sloppy. And I don't want that child looking at it. I don't want that child taking their special ed document to their parents. That's so unacceptable for me. I do not let them do that. Yeah, I don't. It's okay if we just give it to Billy in his backpack. Be comforted. I don't want Billy taking home his legal documents. And the child should not be responsible for delivering legal information. I love that. Did Billy give you the signature that you're coming to the meeting? I always say that. We didn't get the signature right that you're returning to the meeting. We don't do that. Nope. I don't want to pat down my child for a legal document. Okay. Any other questions around prior written notice? Okay, let's see. What do you do if they disclose inaccurate testing procedures in the PWN? Well, that confirms that the conclusions are invalid, right? So you want to be able to look those up. Whatever instrument that they use, you can Google it. Is it normed and standardized? It will have ages. And you can have a standardized instrument that doesn't measure cognition as it relates to eligibility, right? So it's a supplemental instrument that you use, but yeah, you certainly want to look at that. So I would include that in my complaint to the state of Texas based on FISD, which stands for funky. So there's that. Yes. Can we send the paperwork? Absolutely. Now some schools have the portal. Only parents can get the portal. But yes, obviously for hearings, we send things by email. It's a prior written notice need to occur with every annual review. So a prior written notice needs to occur with every IEP meeting. Every IEP meeting, right? When you are changing or refusing to change something. When you're changing or refusing. So when there is an action or a non-action. Okay. I'm going to need you to provide a prior written notice. Since we disagree, I'm going to need you to provide a prior written notice to parents. She goes, well, wouldn't that have been ahead of time? I wish I knew this 800 meetings ago. I wish anybody did this. Wouldn't prior be ahead of time? It would for you, ma'am. It would for you. That would go with your predetermination. PWN be used to add amendments to an IEP without a meeting. Oh, so an amendment. So when you're looking at changing an IEP document, you have to convene an IEP team when you have change for eligibility and change for minutes. So we either say we refuse an action or we did not refuse an action, right? The law is all that. Did not refuse. Okay. So we either refused it or we did not refuse. And then we explain why. So we agreed to make adjustments to his accommodations, which could be called an amendment. I call it a paper amendment, meaning that we don't have to all sit down and say good morning to each other. But yes, you want a prior written notice for the prior written notice for the prior written notice. So anytime anybody says anything goofy in a meeting, but you always want to be asking for your PWN because that captures their understanding of what happened in the meeting. May not be your understanding. And a prior written notice when you disagree with the school district is going to look very favorable for the school district. Remember, we get it right for the child. We get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in the next training.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.